Here we are still basking in the glow of the sunlit glory of Perth, even in the cold weather and pure AQI, poor AQI, I should say. Um, Welcome to the Kumble Corner, the Indian cricket show where we talk about all things Indian cricket. And today, to talk a little bit about the Perth Test and a lot more about Adelaide, I am Super Joshi, joined by Nakul Pande and Karan Mehta. Gentlemen, hello.
How's it going?
Howdy.
Good day. Right, let's talk cricket. Before that, by the way, let me just remind our listeners wherever you get this, make sure you hit follow or subscribe. Um, Tell a friend because this is genuinely entertaining and insightful. And also go and follow us on the socials. Search Kumble Corner, both with Ks, obviously. Um, Talking of 2Ks, our mate Karthik is not with us today, but Karan is joining us. And I think one day we will get both of you together to talk cricket. Gents, are you still thinking, are you still basking in the glory of that test match in Perth where Bumrah's boys just did what no one really expected against Australia? Woke Cummins, horrible Australia. Karan, you first because you went on the last one.
Yeah, duh. Yeah. I really didn't even you when you put in the agenda, I was like, is anyone not still glowing in this? Of course I am. That was awesome. More than anything, more than the win, it's that bounce back. It's similar to losing that 36 last year or 2 years ago and then coming back and winning the series, but all encompassed in one match. After that first innings, I thought the world was burning down. I thought it was time to get rid of everyone. I wanted Gauti out. And then Boomer does what Boomer does, where he just restores faith and restores hope and gives any team that he's on a fighting chance to win. Um, yeah, normally you'd think that we go into Adelaide nervous, but because of the Perth victory and how that went down, I have a little reason to believe that we could squeeze out the series. So yeah, I'm really fucking excited. I don't know what that question means. Yes, duh.
It was just a gimme. It's just a warm up.
Yeah, I'm hyped. Are you not? Are you no longer still glorying? Even if we lose this match, I'm still only going to talk about Perth. It doesn't really
Yeah,
matter.
no, absolutely. It's like basically a no ball in the first ball of the spell. Basically, is what it is. That in your
Got it.
batting.
Okay, well,
Well,
That's what it was.
the Indian batters have been in pink ball nets either side of the tour game, and this is the throwdown. This is the gentle, just the throwdown guy is warming up his arm. Is just
fair enough.
The bowling machine has just been calibrated just with a gentle half volley on off stump.
Then I can tell I might just nip that to Gully. But yeah, see, and the thing is, the more I think about Adelaide and the pink ball, the more nervous I get. So anytime I see myself even veering in that direction, I was like, oh, remember when we just dominated Australia in Perth? That was fun.
Yeah.
So I don't even let myself, like, the preview part for the next match might be a little bit difficult because I've only basked. I've watched the highlights like 4 times, which credit to Cricket Australia because they're immaculate with their post-day reviews, highlights, videos, content, everything. BCCI could take notes.
Very much so. I think their online highlights have been lacking for a long time, and
Yeah.
they've been criticised for that quite roundly. Um, Knuckle, go on then. You talk about Perth and then talk us about the Prime Minister's 11 because for me, what it feels like right now is that Perth was so great, such a high. It's like you've been at an amazing concert and then you realise you've got to walk uphill in the rain home for like 45 minutes. That's what it feels about Adelaide because the Pink Bulls, look, Australia's just stronger than them. But look on, let's start with the Prime Minister's 11, which was going to be a 2-day match and was squashed, concertinaed into one day, right?
Yeah, rain washed out the entirety of the first day. A friend of mine, Joshi, was meant to be commentating that game. She'd been super excited. She'd been doing some Big Bash and Women's Big Bash, and was super excited to get a gig covering this game, and then had to spend the entire first day filling for rain. I've been in that position. It's not fun. So yeah, it ended up becoming a 150 over game where India, chasing 241, scored 275 because they wanted to keep batting. Australia, the PM's 11, managed to collapse from 131 for 2 to 138 for 7. Thanks largely to Harshit Rana, who had a superb day again. Sam Constas, who if Australia keep losing, we'll probably
Wunderkind,
end up
right?
playing at some point before this series is out. Scored a better than runnable 100, and then India just kind of meandered their way to victory. I think the thing that people were taking from this game was kind of more tea leaf reading, more masala chai reading to try and work out who's going to bat where. We now know that KL Rahul has said that he has been told where he is batting, and he has told what the top order is been told what the top order is going to be, but has been told not to tell anybody. KL Rahul and Shubman Gill opened, and Yashasvi Jaiswal opened in that game with Shubman Gill coming in at 3. Virat decided he didn't need the warm up. Rohit came in at 4. I'm not sure that many people thought that would be the way it would go. It would be an unusual move for the captain to come back in and not bat in his accustomed position. We've seen throughout Rohit's career that his career in all formats has taken in international cricket has been massively boosted by him opening. I don't know if it's about just being able to set the pace of the game or not having to react to situations and being more in control. As far as that goes, we've seen him attack and dominate the new ball. We've seen him also dig in like he did in England. But you can understand also why they'd be reluctant to break up Yashasvi Jaiswal and KL Rahul, given how good they looked in Perth and given how well they seem to complement each other as batters. So it's looking like it might end up being Rohit in the middle order, essentially replacing Dhruv Jurel and Shubman Gill coming in at 3 to replace Devdutt Padikkal. And this is basically between the PM's 11 games, the PM's 11 game rather, between people watching practice, between the open nets where India opened up their training sessions to the public and then got freaked out because the public turned up.
And also,
And then,
didn't they also sledge some of their own, like they were sledging and slagging off some of the Indian players? I think
which seems
that's part of the issue.
It
seems a very Indian thing to do, but
it seems a very bizarre thing to do after a win, frankly. But yeah, 5,000 people turned up to watch India net. Normally, I've been at grounds where they literally have like a protective cordon around the nets. Like they put up basically like blackout curtains along the nets to stop you getting even the slightest peek. But those on the ground seem to be thinking that it'll be Rohit in the middle order, which, and maybe that is a secondary benefit of that. I'm sure the primary thing of that is to try and not disturb the opening partnership, which did so well in Perth in the second innings. The secondary benefit of that might be that you have someone who's used to facing the new ball and moving ball when the ball starts moving around in the twilight period, because it's that period, sort of half an hour either side of the twilight period where stuff starts going wrong for the batters and the ball starts moving around extravagantly. It wouldn't be beyond India to throw everybody a curveball and end up with Rohit opening and Gill at 3 and Rahul in the middle order, which is broadly what I was leaning towards at the end of the game. Or actually, no, let me be accurate. I was leaning towards Rahul at 3 and Gill in the middle order. It wouldn't be beyond the realms of possibility for India to come up with that, but everything is leaning towards at the moment keeping the opening pair in situ and Gill in for Padikkal and Rohit into the middle order for Dhruv Jurel.
that's certainly. Sorry, go on. You were saying
that he was paired up with Rishabh Pant in the nets, and certainly the prospect of Rohit coming in the middle order when India have got a good start is quite an enticing one. I have to say. Maybe they're looking for essentially to mirror the setup of the Australian top order, where essentially you have all the aggressive players in the middle order with Rohit and Pant and whoever ends up being the seam and bowling all around, or the spin bowling all around it, and then Nitish Kumar Reddy as well.
So with that, I mean that's the I was looking at it. I was thinking, well, all right, this is different. We were all expecting Rohit come back where he is and KL moved down. Something we discussed on the kind of episode last week where we looked back at the Perth Test. But what you said is kind of what I was thinking as well. Like imagine the new ball's been blunted a little bit. It, I mean, there's two scenarios. There are a few scenarios, but there's either one of the opening pair is out quickly, in which case you've got Rohit Sharma. He's at 3. Is no bad thing because then he's like a de facto opener at that point anyway. Or he's coming in much later when maybe it's the second new ball, or he's coming in the new ball's blunted. He can just hit it around wherever he wants and be aggressive and just take the charge to the Aussies, which, as you said, is enticing and exciting. Especially if you say he's playing with either whether he's with Jaiswal or with KL, because they will provide different foils for him depending on your approach, basically.
Yeah, it's essentially how do you. It's amazing how quickly the narrative has flipped after one game, just after a one series. I say amazing. We should be used to this by now, but now it's too many good players to fit into the same 11 and all of this. We can get onto the bowling attack a little bit later, but we did talk about this in our wrap up of Perth. The problem we've got from the outside is that you've got a whole bunch of scenarios which are all internally logically consistent and all plausible and all have a little bit to them, but you can also make counter arguments against them, and ultimately what happens will happen, and if it goes well, whatever decision is made will be justified post facto, and if it goes badly, then it was the worst decision ever, and everybody should hand in their licenses and hand in their team clothing and the badge and the gun, and they're drummed off the force in disgrace.
Yeah. You mentioned bowlers. I'm just wondering whether Washington Sundar has got. He's listed on the squad, I think, as a bowling all rounder, which I thought was unusual, and I'm wondering whether he's got nudes of Goddy or something, because he seems to be in the running again over Ashwin and Jadeja. It seems. What did you make? I mean, Karan, did you catch any of the Prime Minister's 11 games?
Yeah, I did. Watching it pretty sporadically. I only watched India bat. I didn't get to watch us bowl. Yeah, all in all, I was under the impression that if it's not broke, don't fix it. I wanted Rohit down at 5. I've been saying for like 2 years, especially when Virat was in a slump and Rohit wasn't batting well, for them both to come down because the ball was moving a lot. They would jab, nip away, edged out. And for like just 10 years down the road, Jaiswal being an opener is going to be a lot more likely than Rohit still playing cricket. So I think at this point you sort of cater to the youth, and the Rohit batting at 5, it'll be a different approach, more like an ODI sort of approach. Ideally, if you told me that we're 17 for 4 going into that, 17 for 4, that wouldn't necessarily surprise me either.
So hold on, you've raised a good point there in terms of from the longevity of the squad, or in terms of long-term planning. It makes sense actually to put Rohit lower down as well, because then you've got a 22-year-old opener and KL who's 30-odd.
And shoot at 3, yeah.
Yeah.
So I think it just helps for the future and lets them more concrete their place and know their role moving forward, as opposed to Rohit and Virat, who are probably... Well, okay, Virat will probably bat for another 20 years, and I'm okay with that. But realistically, on the back end of their last year and a half's last sort of cycle that they're going to bat through for test matches. So yeah, I think it's better to get the younger guys more assured in their positioning than fluctuate based off where Rohit and Virat want to go.
So you reckon Shubman's still at 3, Virat at 4,
Rohit at 5.
Rohit at 5. Okay,
Mm-hmm. That's the way I would.
As an opposition, if you manage to get the top 3 and then you've got Virat coming in and then potentially Rohit after him, you're kind of like, oh god.
And
I think it would be, and then Punt. I think it would be demoralising a little bit, wouldn't it?
Agreed. Yeah. So I think it's daunting too, for sure. So yeah, that's at least the way that I would line it up.
Karan, I'm mindful that you missed your moment last week when Kohli got a century. I was gutted you were on some kind of long drive. Do you want to have your moment just to talk about his century?
It's just a classic. He's the best. Fuck everyone who's ever doubted him. He still has it in his bag. He'll have another couple more in this series. And it's just validation for us, for the stands who never stop believing in him, for him, for Anushka, for the little baby. The world is a better place when Virat's scoring runs. It's as simple as that. Food tastes better, music sounds better, the world rotates on a nicer rotation. It's everything that you could possibly want. He's the greatest batter to ever do it, and everyone that thought that he should retire, that he was washed up, they go fuck themselves.
Fair enough. Well, I think the Prime Minister of Australia was glad to see him. Didn't the Prime Minister say? Tell me if I'm misremembering or misquoting, but he seems to suggest that the India-Australia rivalry is bigger than the Ashes or something. Nakul, you might know about this. Did you see this?
Yeah. I mean, we know there's quite close links with him in Modi, as we saw from the Ben Hur style chariot ride when they opened the Ahmedabad Stadium.
Yeah.
Well, not when they opened the Ahmedabad Stadium, because that was the ridiculous pink ball game, but when Australia were in India last year. Yeah. Look, that's the kind of thing you say in front of a home crowd. That's like when you go and address a union of farmers, and then you tell them how much you absolutely love asparagus. So how much we can read into that, I don't know. But
India are asparagus. That's the ticker at the bottom.
But Albanese did also say, he had a little bit of bant with Virat Kohli, saying you scoring runs as though it wasn't hard enough, and Virat Kohli said you got to add a little bit of spice, and everyone had a laugh, and it was all very lovely, and all of this good stuff.
Yeah, the thing about Australians,
I hope Prime Minister Albanese had a nice day.
Yeah, number one thing you would say about the Australians is they appreciate cricket. I mean, this is the country that gave Tendulkar a standing ovation walking in, because they knew he was like, that was, on his last tour. They're like, yeah, we're never going to see him again.
Well, it's a bit of it's giving yourself a compliment, right? It's saying you did this to us. You must be great. It's like, they hated Douglas Jardine when he was captaining against them, and then welcomed him whenever he visited Australia subsequently. They took in Harold Larwood as essentially an honorary citizen when he got the brunt of when he moved to Australia, basically because everyone in England hated him after he'd won them the Borderline series, and they absolutely loved Harold Larwood. They love VVS Lakshman because he scored runs against India.
And Indians love Ajaz Patel probably for the same reason.
They love JP. You'd hear JP Duminy scored an unbelievable 100 early in his Test career. It might have been on debut, but early in his Test career against Australia on debut, yeah. And then every subsequent time that South Africa came to Australia, even when JP Duminy wasn't scoring runs or wasn't even in the squad, people would say how much they love JP Duminy based on that one innings. And it kind of makes sense. That yes, it is partly an admiration for really good and really attacking cricket, and partly you beat us, you must be good.
Yeah.
Am I crazy for thinking it is bigger than the Ashes? And I don't think it's particularly close.
I think a lot of people would agree.
Yeah,
Ashes also doesn't strike. I mean, look, at the end of the day, it's like, look, you're all cousins. Like, it's not the same. Do you know what I mean? Whereas India Australia is actually a difference in culture in many more ways. I mean, yes, Australia is. And they've had to go to this island and tame it, and there's spiders that are out to like the size of your car that wanna are trying to kill you. But at the same time, essentially, Aussies and English people are related, and it's just cousins. That's all it is.
I just think if India Australia played in Dallas, that is selling out, and if India and England play in Dallas, no one gives a shit.
Yeah, I think it's the same. I think it would be exactly the same numbers of people, and probably the exact same people turning up. All of the Indians in Dallas.
I was thinking I'd probably go to both, honestly.
Yeah. I noticed you guys both raise your eyebrows at the use of the word "tame."
Yes,
pointedly.
Yes.
God, this is great.
Wildly ahistorical and verging on offensive. But
that's what we do on Kumla Corner.
Yeah. Yes. No, I mean, look, in the sense that they have, and this is not me saying that. This is something where that's the story that they tells themselves. Australians had to work hard to build something on this inhospitable island. But actually, you know what? What you're saying there, Nakul, actually brings us nicely onto what I wanted to talk about a little bit, which I didn't actually put on the list. Was Australia. We're talking about Virat Kohli. he would get criticised for being a bit woke, actually, funnily enough. But that's the current criticism levelled at Australia, which is ridiculous, as if caring about the environment makes you a bad cricketer. That's one of the most craziest things I've heard. You made the point last week, Nakul. I'm pretty sure you did. I think pretty sure it was you that said his political views or the pally-palliness between the teams wasn't an issue when they won the World Test Championship. It wasn't an issue when they won the ODI World Cup, and a bazillion other things that they've done and achieved. But all of a sudden now, after losing one game, it's all a problem. As is Marnus's ticks.
It's pretty standard. Pretty standard stuff. There's a lot of people with a lot of tweets and drafts. There's a lot of people who don't like change and don't like the fact that some members of the Australian team, particularly high-profile ones, will no longer just represent and reflect their own outdated views back at them, and so therefore, whenever they lose, you can't say it when they win because no one will listen. But suddenly, also, I think suddenly you've got 9 days between Test matches. There's been which probably is not about the time you would want to recover from a grueling Test match, but we don't get that these days. The only reason it's 9 days is because it takes a long time to get back from Perth, and they don't like to schedule games in Perth too close to games in other cities. So you've had all of this time and all of this vacuum into which some takes must go. Just sort of pour them out, scrape them from the bottom of the pot, pour in a bit of South Australian wine to scrape off the bottom of the pot, and so you end up with stuff like this. You end up with people saying that Marnus Labuschagne should go back and play not just grade cricket but third team grade cricket. You end up with long dissections about whether Australia are now all too old or all too passive or somehow not Australian enough. It's not enough to just be beaten. It has to be some departure and deviation from orthodoxy, from creed, from the proper way to do things. And so you get takes like this. It's interesting now that we're getting a little bit closer to the game. We're starting to get pieces about, Marnus is batting more assertively in the nets. We're starting to get stuff like, there was actually a really nice piece. Brendan Doggett has been brought into the side to replace Josh Hazlewood, and there was a couple of really nice pieces about how Brendan Doggett and Nathan McSweeney used to live together for a long time, and how Doggett was the first person McSweeney called when he got called into the Test team. And people are now starting to build the counter narrative and G everybody up before the Test match.
Isn't this the same guy that McSweeney left home with and moved to a different state and they lived together? That's Doggett, right?
Yep, that's the one.
It's like two guys leaving Bihar to go to Mumbai for the bright lights. That's what the parallel they're trying to do.
Yeah, and then Brendan Doggett basically taught him how to be an adult because he'd never lived at home away from home before.
Yeah. He was a street urchin he befriended. Is that how it is?
I like the cut of your jib, kid. It looks like, speaking of the bowlers, just very, very quickly, Josh Hazlewood is out of the Test match. It looks very likely that Scott Boland will come in for this game. And great. Scott Boland obviously has demolished England at the MCG and then got demolished by England last summer. So let's see how that one goes. He hasn't actually bowled very much in the Sheffield Shield, but he is obviously a bowler who, if there is a little bit of movement, will be quite difficult to face.
Of which there will be, right? Because it's a pink ball test. So.
And the Kookaburra balls, the pink Kookaburra balls are slightly different to how they used to be. They've got a little bit of extra lacquer. They've got an extra layer of lacquer. The seam is more proud too. The theory is that it'll which I think was basically made so that it didn't start disintegrating or deteriorating rather, and become very difficult to sight under the light because it would get very stuffed up.
There's two things there, right? One, the Kookaburra ball has changed slightly anyway, so the seam was more pronounced, and on top of that, there's a few more layers of lacquer to keep the pink on. So, like you said, it doesn't disintegrate and become harder to spot in the lights. So So there's kind of two things in it, and it behaves in a slightly different way.
And that basically means that you, rather than pitching the ball up and trying to swing it under the lights, you bowl kind of like you do in other test matches where you bowl on a length, wobble seam, try and hit the seam, and get the ball to move, sharply. Yeah, so you, which kind of aids all of the bowlers really in this, all of the seamers in this game. It's also been a test where Nathan Lyon's done very well, particularly as the game has gone on. It has tended to really favour the fast bowlers. So in men's pink ball tests, Australian spinners, which is basically Lyon, have averaged 28, and visiting spinners have averaged 64. So Lyon finding a way to be effective in conditions that, in theory, shouldn't suit him.
But he has been. Yeah.
I'm sure helped by the fact he used to literally be the groundsman at Adelaide.
But wouldn't you also think it has to do some, and I don't know the numbers behind it, but if the pace attack is so benefited from the pink ball, then Nathan Lyon is, in theory, the bowler to attack. I'm just curious to see how many of those wickets in that average were not just slog sweeps or just bad balls that got wickets because the batters were just under the gun and needed to score.
I think we'll get on the case.
It's an interesting point. He does take his wickets quicker in pink ball test matches than red ball games. I'm sure that is partly true as well, but I'm sure the fact of a little bit of extra bounce and it's all of those things that make the ball skidding on a little bit more. I mean, it's all of the things that make Lyon a really good bowler anyway. I suppose.
Just accentuated.
Yeah.
I just want to compliment them without a little bit of backhanded jab.
Yeah, well, I think Ajinkya Rahane has done that too well anyway in the last series where he gave him a signed shirt. So I don't think anyone could ever top that jab. Karan.
True.
Pink ball, I just realised. Ultimate sign of wokeness. Unbelievable.
Also, the wokeness thing, isn't it kind of fun? Because this is what Australia used to do to every other team. Like, Australia would beat you in such a way that you question the exact fabric and foundation of your team. You find the dumbest reasons for why.
Oh yeah, you go to Australia and you essentially call a judge before you go to prepare for the fact that they're going to have to do an institutional review of how you do everything in your cricket at the end of it. The amount of root and branch reforms that we've seen coming out of English cricket after visiting Ashes series, and the amount of careers that have been ended by it. It's interesting that people were starting to talk in between this tests about whether if Australia did go on to lose this series really badly, whether we'd be in that kind of position with Australia, parliamentary commissions and retired judges and all of this stuff like happened. I think it was after South Africa a few years ago.
Yeah, it's fun.
Are you talking about sandpaper? Is that what you're talking about?
No. It was after it was the Argus review for like 2016, 2017.
Oh, nothing to do with sandpaper.
No. That was a whole bit, but no. It was after they got humiliated by South Africa in 2016 or something, and then
is that what led to carpentry class?
Carpentry class?
Sandpaper.
Yeah, that one went over my head too. I was hoping Nakul could pick that one up.
Oh dear.
But I like cheaters.
Right. So no, but seriously, Australia have got a frightening record with regards to pink ball tests because they play them every year, and also Adelaide as well. I think that last year the Windies beat them. And that was, it's great that West Indies is going there and beating them as well. So they must be good because they beat Australia, also the Gabba. But India don't have that kind of experience, and it will be a different proposition. Karan, you mentioned right at the beginning that actually you're prepared to write this one off. Say, all right, we lose it. Cool. Like, it's not a problem because we've got the other proper test matches, in the sense to say the ones that we're more familiar with, to go. And you're fairly confident that will happen. But I mean, look, what seems to happen with these, just from my very basic research, is that you bat first, post a decent score. That's what West Indies did last year, and then under lights, it's tough to bat, and on the last day, it's also a bit tough as well. So essentially, you win the toss, bat first, and you win the game. That's what seems to have happened. Um, do you think India, with all their experience in Dubai, should be able to handle this, or do you think are you kind of mentally prepared for a shocking collapse?
Shocking. Well, being an India cricket fan, you're always mentally prepared for a shocking collapse at this point. It's
Until
always.
it happens, then you're like, oh, this again. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Oh, really? Every time in the back of my head, when we lose one, I was like, all right. And it's not like one brings two in my head in India. It's like one brings seven. And
Yeah.
next thing you know, we're 80 for 9.
Well, that happened in the first innings, right? First, so.
Yeah, 30 and 46 is just numbers you can't get out of your head. But
do you want to shout out your boy Daniel Alexander?
no,
Because
fuck that guy. I'm so happy that happened. That 42, that mental, mathematical, gymnastic, race baiting, reply blocking scumbag. Yeah, I'm glad this happened to him.
because I know you mentioned you called him out a few times on this podcast to come on.
Yeah, who's
and
was it? Like,
I don't think it's every day. Like unfortunately, unlike India, Sri Lanka don't seem to get out for low scores.
wasn't Karthik like saying like he's like a nice guy or something? Yeah, fucking right. Don't believe that.
I'm sure he is a nice guy. I'm sure it's just white line fever, basically. It's just except an X.
I'm willing to bet he's a terrible human. But
Nakul seems to know him. Nakul, are you smoking because you know him?
No, I've never interacted with him in real life or on social media, and I'm quite happy to keep it that way.
Yeah, smart. Okay. No, that means that you have more self-respect for you, and I respect that. I don't personally. So yeah, I take the bait. It's like I take the low-hanging fruit. I always will, always have. Am I ready for a collapse? No, I'm more scared that what a potential collapse could bring to the team composition after that. I don't want something to go bad and then we blow it all up for the third test. I think if we put up a fight, that's a win for us. I don't know if Vegas has the odds or anything like that. But a collapse would be disappointing off the back of what we just did. A loss wouldn't surprise me, but if we put up a fight, then I'm sure I can find enough good in that match to bring it out. But if we do what we did last time at Adelaide, then no, that's a fucking. Then we're too woke and burn it all down and get Rohit back out of India or out of Australia.
Okay, yeah, I mean it seems to have happened in reverse time. Last time India had an injury, captain went off, all the rest of it. This time it seems to happen to Australia.
There's one thing about that game is that's the only time a team have lost a day-nighter in Australia after taking a first innings lead. So it tends to take something quite. It has taken that because it's one ridiculous outlier, but it is a game where you try and do your scoring early in the day and early in the match to set yourself up because they have tended to be Australia have tended to be very, very good front runners in day-night games where they've got ahead of teams and not let it go. There's a couple of Ashes Test matches against England where England had them in okay positions and then completely fell apart. There was one where South Africa in 2016 actually were declared early to try and have a go. Basically declared sort of an hour before the end of play on the first day to try and have a go at the Australian openers, particularly out of form David Warner. They moved David Warner down to 3 and Usman Khawaja scored 145 and Australia ended up winning that game comfortably. So teams used to get quite funky and try and come up with sort of trick plays to try and stop Australia in day-night tests. What you would say is that I'm not a big believer in momentum, particularly not after 9 days. But there are some psychological scars that India managed to inflict, particularly Jasprit Bumrah. And if Australia aren't careful to block that out and to concentrate on what they're trying to do, those are the kind of mild traumas that can reassert themselves because nobody is looking forward to facing Jasprit Bumrah under lights either, or Mohammad Siraj or Harshit Rana, who is probably going to continue with that third fast bowlers spot. I mean, again, look, no particular team composition would hugely shock me, but there's no compelling reason to break those three up at this stage. I'm sure
Do,
that
do you
I'm sure that
think?
Nathan McSweeney would much rather, and the rest of the Australian top order would much rather not be facing Jasprit Bumrah under the lights.
Yeah. Do you think Rana's got enough to play that game if he has to bowl a spell, like a longer spell?
He's had a decent rest. It's not like we're going back to back to back.
I mean, mentally, not physically. Like and ability wise, I mean, yeah, not physically. I mean, he's built like a horse, so I think he'd be fine. Like, I don't think he's going to get tired.
As far I can't really answer that question, to be honest, because we haven't seen it in Test cricket. But the only way you build that is by doing it. The only way you build that long sort of Test match stamina is by going and bowling and coming back for your second and third spell. He did a little bit of that in Perth in the second innings, but Adelaide is a game where the wickets tend to fall quite quickly in the second, third, and fourth innings. So it might not be as relevant. That ability to keep coming back might not be as relevant as it might be, say, later in the series at the MCG, maybe, or if Sydney is particularly flat. But
yeah,
and
it may well be a 2 or 3 day game, basically.
Well, or maybe not 2 or 3, but we've seen a lot of games sort of late day 4, early day 5, and it's part of a 5 bowler attack.
Yeah.
So it's not quite so damaging. There's nothing that I've seen from Harshit Rana or heard come out of the squad that would suggest that they aren't confident in his ability to do that. So I would have no issues with that. I'd also have no particular issues if they decided to bring in, they're watching Akashdeep and Prasidh Krishna and the others bowl on a regular basis. We know Akashdeep has been bowling quite a lot at some of the top order. The interesting call for me is about the spinner, and Ashwin didn't bowl in that game in the PM's 11 game.
And there seems to be no sounds about him having a niggle. It doesn't seem that injury is a reason.
No, and he's been apparently spending a lot of time sort of working closely with the coaches. Washington Sundar didn't wasn't batting with the top 6 yesterday, I think it was. Jadeja seems to have been very, very quiet. That might well be India trying to just sort of keep everybody guessing up until the last minute. I think the reasons were quite compelling for playing Ashwin as the one spinner at Perth, and I think those reasons still exist for playing Ashwin as the one spinner in Adelaide.
Would you say more so, perhaps, in Adelaide than Perth?
No, I'd say about the same, because Nathan Lyon has done very well in Perth, and he and Ashwin bowl in a roughly similar manner. Tall bowlers, overspin, drift, can get things out of pitches that aren't necessarily turning that much. There's still a lot of left-handers in this Australian team. I think that all of the reasons that were given for Washington Sundar playing that game, which were the fact that he's tall, the fact that he is good against left-handers, and the fact that he brings you a lot with the bat, all of those reasons equally apply to Ashwin. And
probably more so because of experience, actually.
Well, the guy is one of the greatest bowlers of the modern era and one of the greatest bowlers India have ever produced. And
a great thinker of the game.
And a great thinker of the game, and someone who can problem solve on the fly. And I would like to see him play this Test match. But the same also applied before the Perth Test match. Washington Sundar did fine. He hasn't made an overwhelming case to keep his spot, and really he's not going to be batting in the top 6. He's going to be batting 7 or 8, and I think Ashwin is perfectly capable of doing that. And and again, I think I said this again before, but it depends how much you want your spinner to bowl. If you want your spinner to bowl a lot, then you pick Ashwin. If you don't, then maybe you go more towards Washington or Jadeja. But I would like to see Ashwin play this game.
Okay. Karan, your thoughts on I mean, we might as well go through your 11 then, really. What are
I
you
wouldn't
doing?
change any. I wouldn't change much in the bowling. I can't. I'm a
Well,
big
so
believer.
let's
For
start again.
those.
So from the batting, you've generally already mentioned at the beginning, right? You said KL Jaiswal up top, then Gill, Kohli, Sharma,
Rohit,
Pant,
Pond.
and then we start from where
Yep.
you're at. So go on, give
Yeah.
us the rest of your lineup.
I don't know. I don't have all the stats and numbers to back anything up. I sort of
That's fine.
shoot from the cuff, hip. I wouldn't change much. I like watching Ashwin bowl. I think he's always going to be a game wrecker and game changer. I feel more confident in Washi's batting, which I think we might need because, for better or worse, I'm never convinced on this batting lineup. I always think a collapse imminent. So I tend to trust Washington with the bat more, and I don't think no stats to back this up. I don't know if the spinners will really have too much of an effect on the bowling. I think it's going to be spin heavy and then maybe spot spin bowling just to give the paces a rest. So I really probably wouldn't change a whole bunch. But if you told me Ashwin came in for Washi, I wouldn't lose sleep, but it's probably not a change I'm gunning to make.
And then paces. Well, I guess I'm guessing you're thinking Reddy is staying in.
Yeah, I mean, if you took Reddy out, I wouldn't hate it again. I like watching Prashant Krishna bowl, but it's just one of those things that if they bowl terribly, you're like, well, why did we even mess with the chemistry of the first team bowling attack who bowled really well in unison? So again, it's changes that I think might help. I don't think it's like absolutely head and shoulders definitive no brainer decisions. But I think you look worse if the replacements underperform than if you just keep the team going and they underperform.
Yeah. So I mean, typically, I guess I'm gleaning from this is potentially Ashwin in for Sundar, and the rest stays as it is. The rest of the bowling lineup stays as it is.
Yeah, that's probably the way that I would go, but I don't like to rock the boat.
Yeah. I think we'd all, as much as we like Washi and want him to do well. I think, for, yeah, I think we probably all would want Ashwin to play. Maybe partly out of sentimental reasons.
That's
Well, I just think he's a brilliant bowler, and I think that he would cause Australia far more problems with the ball than Washington Thunder would for all of his quality. And I think the batting is a very much a secondary factor in the selection between the two of them. Nitish Kumar Reddy very much did his job in Perth, more with the bat than with the ball. You're picking him as a fifth bowler. You're picking him as someone who can hold up an end and give the other seamers a rest, and he did a decent job with that. There's probably a lot of work to do on his bowling, but he played an important role with the bat in the first innings, and there's no compelling reason to leave him out. The only reason you would do that is if you wanted two spinners, which we've talked about is a way I'm quite happy with India going in general, but Nitish Kumar Reddy's absolutely earned his an opportunity. Well, he's earned his chance to have another opportunity. So I would go with Nitish Kumar Reddy, Ashwin, and then keep the same three fast bowlers as the first test with Bumrah, Siraj, and Harshit. Well, Rana, Bumrah, and Siraj in batting order, probably.
Yeah.
So for me, it's three changes. It's Gill in for Parakal, it's Rohit in for Jurel, and it's Ashwin in for Washington.
Yeah. Okay. And I think looking forward, then there will be perhaps a case, especially if we go to Sydney or wherever else, that maybe Jadeja in for Reddy if you want to play with two spinners, because you don't really compromise on batting quality there. But you get a spinner. And
100%, or maybe 100%. Potentially, the MCG is as well. Or if you want to give, you want to change this up, it wouldn't be a huge shock to see any of the three of them playing as a sole spinner either. Let's be real about that. Interesting that it's all gone quite quiet about Shami coming in. There was talk of him coming over for the PM's 11 game or being brought in partly between the series. I think the fact that India won has taken the pressure off that. I wouldn't be surprised if we ended up seeing him at some point in this series, at least coming in and flying over. There was talk of the fourth or the fifth test. But I think it's a good sign. I think that no one's really talked about that, or no one's saying you must bring him in, because those kind of conversations don't happen when a team has won.
Yeah. That was a little bit of preempting panic there, I think, but by mentioning him before the game had started at Perth. Right, gents. Is there anything else you want to mention? Actually, you know what? One thing Judeja would help with is also overrates. England, New Zealand getting spanked for that. Karan, what do you make of Ben Stokes' point? The match was finished in 4 days.
He's so miserable to stay here and talk about. Like this last week, he's just been so grumpy. And now it's like one of those things, and I know college football isn't prevalent there, but it's like everyone tries to make their case for why their team should be in the playoff. It's like subjective. And now Ben Stokes just comes off as bitter. Like, buddy, it doesn't fucking matter if you got 3 points deducted or 20 points handed to you. You're 20 spots down the fucking roster. You don't even know how it works. Nobody cares to watch like England just embarrass themselves again. So yeah, no, Ben Stokes is just trying to stay relevant. I don't blame him.
I mean, he did just win, though, to be fair to him.
Yeah, well, he
and,
did.
and at home. At home. It's not quite what I meant that way, but yeah.
That worked out for India. We needed New Zealand to lose, so that's good for us.
And
so no matter
points
what,
deduction means they're out, aren't they? Pretty much with the points.
Well, England were already out. They would
New
be.
Zealand,
yeah. New Zealand are all but out. It really helps in Africa's case, actually, so it really helped.
Yeah.
Obviously, them also smushing Sri Lanka. It's interesting. I did the maths today. So England have lost 22 points through slow over rates in this cycle of the World Test Championship. If you added those back on, England would be third on the table.
That makes me so happy.
It's frankly a little bit weird, given how the fact that England actually play incredibly quickly in the games don't tend to drag on. You certainly don't get the sense of watching England that games drag on. Maybe there will be a tweak to the slow over rates. It's really interesting because you get people, the same people who complain about over rates are the same people who are now saying why have England got dropped all of these points from over rates. It's not a conversation you tend to see so much outside of England.
Well, I think it's because New Zealand got hammered as well this time. New Zealand had a case because we'll just catch you the ball from boundaries because they're basketballing so hard. But
yeah, it seems a little bit cruel, doesn't it? To you get taken apart and then you lose some of your match fee and lose some points. It's also Australia missed out in the first iteration of the World Test Championship because of overrates. Maybe there does need to be a tweak, but it's interesting that people have been saying for a long time that fines don't do anything and there need to be competitive consequences for slow overrates. Now there are competitive consequences for slow overrates and actually quite stringent ones, and everyone's still complaining that the ACC doesn't do enough about slow overrates.
Shouldn't they? So I mean, guys, on that, right? Points, cool, but should there be? I've seen some random internet people saying, "What about in-game penalties?" So,
penalty runs is the one that people always talk about.
Or losing a fielder. It could be losing a fielder, right?
Well, like you see in, it's quite a fun thing in white ball cricket, although it does make the last over of T20s even more ridiculous at times. It's definitely contributed to the massively high scores in the last IPL.
Well, they could just be doing this free hit.
I personally don't care very much about over rates, and I think that it is not a conversation. It's not a thing that I waste a lot of time thinking about. I think it's a long, long way down the list of things that are holding back Test cricket is over rates. Put it this way: if you're watching that Test match where England played really well, New Zealand dropped a bunch of catches, but Harry Brook really made them pay, and then Bryden Cast bowled brilliantly. If you're coming out of that game complaining that you didn't get an extra 4 overs per day, I really think you need to take a look at where your priorities lie.
Yeah, I don't think anyone's really complaining. I don't think this came from spectators. It probably came from the administrators, and it's just a bit of a computer says no, I think.
The people are complaining, and it just happens to be the captain of England.
Well, no, he's complaining that it shouldn't be enforced.
That it matters, yeah.
He's basically saying, are you not entertained? That's what he said.
That's true. And no, we're not.
And I personally think he's got a bit of a point there, and the rules might need a tweak. Look, that's not the reason why England are nowhere near making the World Test Championship final. And the fact that England consistently are taking this World Test Championship final, I don't know her approach is
even though it's in England.
It does irritate me. It does irritate
me.
me.
And New Zealand isn't complaining. It's just always England. Like I've learned that once there were 17 wickets lost in the first day of this match and not a peep about the pitch, I was like, all right, it is.
Well, there were some people. There were some people. There were people saying not that it was unfair. They were saying that the pitch wasn't very good.
Oh, the pitch was fine. Bad, it was bad. Whatever. All right, we don't need to get my England rant in.
Yeah, well, I think that basically what you're saying is that that's not a reason for selecting Jadeja just on its own.
Yeah. USA got 5 penalty runs via overrate against USA in the T20 World Cup, which I think really helped India squeeze that one out. So, for better or worse.
Yes. Is that your last word then, Karan? For better or worse? I think that's probably a best way to sum up our existential...
For richer, for poorer.
Yeah.
It's just how we are as cricket fans. Just we'll see how we are, better or worse, next time we meet. Gentlemen, thank you for your insights. And to our listeners, thank you for listening. And make sure you hit subscribe and hit follow. These guys are doing the arrow pointy thingies. If you can't hear them, if you can't see them, you're only listening, then they are pointing in the direction where your subscribe button is. Go and tell a friend to tell a friend, because this is the Indian Cricket Show. It is Kumble Corner. Go and follow us on socials as well. Until next time, here's hoping for a great result in Adelaide. Bye.